VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. It is the January 12th edition. We are 3 days away from Vikings Giants. Dakota is back with us. You know, when you came on my show, you had the biggest audience I've had since like the summer. And so correspondingly, you're back, 2 weeks later? How are you?
I'm good. That's wow. Holy crap. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little nervous because, sometimes in the community that we're in, they're not the most receptive to female creators or even people who are involved in football. So the fact like I'm blown away genuinely.
Well, A, screw them, and B, that mentality sucks. We're going to continue to have you on and other women. So welcome back to the show. For those that didn't see you the last time, where can they find you on the internet if they please?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Dadam Thielen. That's DADAMTHIELEN. Last time everyone made fun of me for not spelling Adam Thielen's last name, so I figured this time I would. Otherwise, on Instagram and TikTok, I'm found on Western Dakota.
Oh, okay. Awesome. All right. And right now you're on a college campus, or where are you at? Where are you at in America right now?
So I'm located in Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
I'm going to school at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. I'm getting my Bachelor in Fine Arts in acting.
Ooh, okay. All right, with a side dish of Viking stuff in between. We love it. All right, I'm going to ask you about 5 or 6 Vikings things. We'll chat about this playoff matchup for about 15 minutes. And the first thing I want to do is, as Vikings fans, we tend to mentally prepare for the worst. So to get this out of the way, if the Vikings, God forbid, lose to the Giants, I want to know, in retrospect, would 2022 be considered a successful season, or would it be a ginormous letdown for a one and done in a 13-win campaign?
I think it's a huge success. I think it was very messy. I won't lie. This has been a very messy season. We've had the highest highs, we've had the lowest lows. But I think if this is what we can do, like if this is what Kevin O'Connell's messy is, I'm as like thinking for other NFL fans, I am terrified of what his like clean and perfected and really honed in team is going to look like. I mean, the fact that we started off with a blow off and we really never had two consistent losses in a row,
Mm-hmm.
I think anyone should be proud of that regardless of the team. But the fact that it was a first year head coach, the fact that this is probably I think it was like the highest win of any first year Vikings head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this should be considered a one and done. I think this should be considered a starting point, if anything.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we both believe that they'll win, but there is some sentiment that I can see Sunday night if the unthinkable happened, then when it would turn into a debate. It was like, was this even worth it? And it seems, according to you, that it would be. Yes, the most successful previous season before O'Connell and the Vikings was Dennis Green in 1992. The Vikings went 11-5, and bada bing, here's O'Connell at 13-4. Let's see here. All right, some of this Giant stuff. They played each other less than 3 weeks ago. The Vikings needed a franchise record-setting field goal to win the damn thing. And now there's tape for both teams. What scares you the most about the Giants, who are kind of a trendy pick to upset the Vikings by the national media?
I think first and foremost, when aren't we the not trending pick? I feel like this entire season, even when we were playing against the Bears, we still weren't like everybody's pick. First and foremost, what scares me is that their quarterback has been resting since last week.
Mm-hmm.
He is fairly decent at the rush game himself. As we've seen more and more quarterbacks be a little bit more comfortable rushing, even our own Kirk Cousins, as my friends lovingly call him, has rushed every now and then. But I have a fear that based on the way that Ed Donatel has really been lining up our defensive line, I'm a little scared that we're unprepared to match up against a Russian quarterback again. They've also had some pretty significant injuries over the season that are now like scheduled to come back against us.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that one of our biggest weaknesses right now is the rush game, and that's going to be key in going against this Giants defense. And I'm really scared that Kevin O'Connell is going to want to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. They're going to want to, continue his legacy. But I think we really need to focus in more on what the Giants' weaknesses are versus what our strengths are, because as we've seen, everybody is going to be playing to Justin Jefferson. So we really need to be able to adjust. And I don't know if based on the Giants secondary, if we are clever enough to adjust in a responsible way, if that makes sense.
Sure. One thing about Jefferson that's kind of been a little quiet here in the last few days is he's been stifled in the last two games. He didn't really play much against the Bears because it was like a preseason game, and then totally stifled against Packers. So he, in theory, based on his MO, should be sitting on a monster game, whether it's this week or hopefully the following one. And then on the Donatel thing, I want to point out to viewers that no matter what, if he's coaching the Broncos or the Packers way back when, the defensive coordinator, he sucks against mobile quarterbacks. There's no other way around it. It's by the numbers. It's undeniable. So, yes, Daniel Jones isn't the fastest guy, but he's also right in the mid-tier of quarterback speed, and he's kind of fits that deceptively fast. All right, I want you to turn off the optimism blinders here for a minute. We don't want any of the rah-rah. I want to know realistically, how far can the Vikings get in this playoff tournament?
I this is the one question that has been like stumping me all night. Like it genuinely has been keeping me up all night. I see the tweets where it's like the Vikings are either going to win the Super Bowl by like a point or we're going to get blown out in the first round. And genuinely, I kind of believe it. I'm leaning into that sentiment. I think that this season alone has been so crazy and it's been so unpredictable that I don't even think you can really predict the playoffs or the Super Bowl at this point. Realistically, I think we have a decent chance against the Giants, just purely because as we've seen, if you talk shit against the Vikings fans, that never ends well. I think there's like an actual statistic that teams, when they come to US Bank Stadium and they say anything against like the fans, the school chant, etc., they're like 5-0, I believe, or we're 5-0, excuse me. We're 5-0 against people who say anything against us. So I would say, if we end up playing either the 49ers and the Eagles, I personally believe that that's where it ends. But like I said, this season has been so unpredictable that I'm sure. Genuinely, I am not sure. Like we have gone into games where we definitely should have lost and somehow came out with a win. We've gone into games where we should have won and came out with a loss. So realistically, I have no idea.
No, that's fair. I foresee we'll get to this in about 8 minutes or so. I do think the Vikings will win handily this weekend, if you can believe that. But then I think the luck runs out in San Francisco. But at least we'll have a week I'll have my week to talk myself out of that. And then on the other teams doing weird stuff, that happened this week I think at the beginning of the week with Nick Gates, an offensive lineman for the Giants. He said the last time the teams played, which was Christmas Eve, it wasn't very loud in there. And he said that the folks were too nice to be loud. And he can get away with saying that, he said, because he went to the University of Nebraska. And this dude grew up in Nevada. You don't get to go to Nebraska for 4 years and claim to be, Minnesota nice and just get away with it. So, yeah, it was, curiously, a little quiet in that Giants game. I couldn't get there because we were snowed in South Dakota. But from all pals that I have, indeed. But I don't think it will be that way this time. All right, so you mentioned all of the craziness, the one-score games. The Vikings somehow are 11-0 in one-score games, and I swear to God, if somebody would have told us that back in August that was going to happen, we would jump for joy. But here we are, kind of like, oh well, don't they ever beat anybody by more than one score? That's how we feel now. So does this 11-0 record in one-score games provide on-the-job training for this playoff game, or is it embarrassing that they flat out can't beat anybody by more than 8 points?
I genuinely think it is. I think it is very much training for playoffs. We have seen so many times in Vikings history that our playoff games are decided by 1 point. They are decided by a field goal. They are decided by a Minneapolis Miracle. And so I think genuinely the fact that we are getting it into our system now, whether it's on accident or on purpose, I think the fact that we are getting it into our system now could potentially break our curse in the playoffs, which is why I'm very hesitant to say that we're not going to make it to the Super Bowl, because I don't know. I'm hopeful that this is the year that we finally break that curse. Plus the fact that we have so many guys on our team that have never made it to the playoffs. I think getting them in the mentality of playoff games are hard. You fight to the very last second. You have to have that, like Patrick Peterson said, 5 touchdown mentality, just 5 touchdown mentality, that it's really going to help them going into it. I would say if this becomes a trend over the next couple of seasons, I would start to get a little nervous. I don't think it's a really good regime if you're playing every single game down to the wire. I also think that it's a really good sign personally that our first game and our last games weren't down to the second.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ending the season on a note that we were able to fairly efficiently take down the Bears even with our backups and, second string. I've got faith that, it's going to set us up in the right mindset to hopefully not have how we've been playing the regular season play in the playoffs, if that makes sense.
It does. And then on your point from the top of the show about O'Connell in his first year, I'm going to bet that you are a better actress now than you were in 2018. And
exactly.
just as I am, I hope, a better writer than I was 4 years ago. So in that same vein, if this is the growing pains, underwhelming 13-4 record, then it feels like the sky is the limit for O'Connell. But this is a big one because he's going against another first-year head coach. In theory, he shouldn't be outmatched or out-schemed by some wizard. It's just another dude that was an offensive coordinator, just like O'Connell, on a successful team. So we shall see there. All right, before we get to predictions, I've got to ask you this. I think it is beyond the shadow of a doubt that Justin Jefferson was the Vikings' best player in 2022. I don't think anybody would dispute that. But aside from him, Dakota, who was the Vikings' best player this regular season, not named Justin Jefferson?
Do like the Little Caesars thing and just do like Preston Pefferson or whatever that like Matthew Stafford thing is. I said this on the first show and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say Kirk Cousins. Like I said, I used to be a Kirk Cousins doubter. I will wholeheartedly admit to that because if you go on my Twitter, you see that now I am like one of his biggest defenders. He genuinely is a whole other guy this year. I don't know what KOC did. I don't know what upgrades this dad man has installed into his system, but he is a whole other individual. He is a leader. He is a fighter. I mean, the fact that he is pressured more than any other quarterback in the NFL right now and is able to make some of these fantastic plays that he's been making, the fact that he is open with the players, and you can really tell versus, the last couple of years that they believe in him, they back him up. I think overall, not just as a player, but as a person, he has grown and he has become the best player on the Vikings that he truly can be. And I mean, the fact that he's a top 5 quarterback this season and is still getting doubters, they need to stop doubting him. He genuinely, when he has the right people behind him, coaches, players, etc., he is truly a weapon. And I think if this is what KOC can do with him in a first year, again, I would be scared to be any other NFL team going up against Kirk Cousins. And I think that along with his newfound confidence and his tenure, like he is going to be explosive. And I think that's really going to help us out in the playoffs.
It's worth noting, too, if you operate under the pretense that he'll be back, he's got one more year left in his contract plus a no trade clause. This will be the first time in close to ever for him that he'll have the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back years. It's always a new guy, and it's very weird that that's happened to him. And it's not like they're fleeing the ship. It's like dudes get promoted, like Gary Kubiak retired. So it will be interesting to see with that continuity, assuming that Cousins is the QB1 in 2023. What else can happen? All right. I think I predicted, can't remember which show it on. I think it was on this one. I do think that the Vikings finally have a commanding win. I'm getting bold. I've tried to pick this. I have picked this for like 3 times in the past month of them winning a game outright, and it hasn't happened. And this is my last chance to do it this season because if they win next week, it ain't going to be by commanding margin. So I have Vikings 30-13 in a game that it feels pretty secure, pretty confident, just enough to get us really pumped about the following week, probably going to San Francisco. It sounds like you're going to pick, or hope, maybe you're not. What are you picking for Vikings Giants?
I definitely think, I'm kind of hoping that we're going to start our playoff season the same way we started our like regular season, with a really great win at home. I think it'll be a little more low scoring just because I think it'll take us a little bit to adjust to their defense. I would probably say personally, maybe like 24-10, I think is where I want to sit.
Oh, we'll take it. That sounds like a Zimmer score to me. And although I don't miss Zimmer as the head coach, I do miss the games where they would just kind of go up by that margin you just mentioned in the second or third quarter, and then you could relax. Because now it doesn't matter. This Sunday, if the Giants go up 17-3, we'll look at our watch and be like, oh, all right, that's all right. We'll be fine. If the Vikings go up 17-3, we'll be like, all right, how long until this thing gets to be 17-17? That's the way this season has gone. All right, any closing arguments from you or any shout outs to anybody you want to give?
Well, first and foremost, the fact that Ed Donatel just said that we are going to be surprised by the defense this Sunday genuinely has me nervous.
I think he wanted to get you
I,
excited, but he did the opposite.
yeah, from what I've seen on Twitter this morning, everyone was like, "Oh God, Ed, like please go knock on wood, throw some salt over your shoulder, please, something don't jinx us." Second of all, Giants, you should know better than to say things against the fans. I don't know about you, but I feel like this team in particular is very protective over us. And lastly, hi mom.
All right, yeah, make sure you send her the link and she'll stay to the end and watch that. All right, you keep me posted on your schedule. Perhaps next week we could talk about another playoff game. If we really get lucky, 2 weeks from today, talk about an NFC championship. Otherwise, you need to put on your off-season cap in the indefinite future to start talking about free agency and, of course, the draft, because that's all this show will be for about 3 months. All right, anything else, Dakota?
Oh, that's everything. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Awesome. We'll hit you up soon, and we appreciate you joining. And Skol Vikings.